Hey guys, welcome back to another class. So Pearl is coming back. Yippee! If you're not excited about it, don't worry. If you're someone that hasn't played it in a while, don't worry. If you're someone that hasn't played the game while it was around, don't worry. Today's class is going to be about covering Pearl, some of the things that we need to kind of look at when it comes to Pearl, some agents that you should know about that are really good on Pearl, and maybe some plant spots, and generally some of the things you have to do when you're clearing on attack, since attack is generally where a lot of players tend to screw up. Today's class is just pretty simple. We're going to be looking at those 3 topics, and then we're going to be looking at anything else that may concern later in the future. So if you're wondering why we didn't have a class on Friday, it was just simple. I had a class for Sunset, but Sunset is also changing, so that was going to be outdated very quickly. So I decided to kind of pivot away from it. So today's class is going to be on Pearl, a map that is going to be coming back in. Thank you guys for everybody. Thank you for anybody that has been subscribing, following any of the content, and kind of commenting anything at all. I do really appreciate the support, and hopefully I'll keep making more content that satisfies you guys. All right, with that out of the way, let's move on with the video. When you guys are going to be looking at the content, you're going to be seeing that I'm going to be talking a little bit about how the map works, and I'm going to be discussing that throughout with each individual topic, because it's kind of important for you to know the difference between how pros play it and how you will play it in ranked. There are some things you can copy from them, and I will be talking about those extensively, but there are some things that you could take from the pros that might work for you. We're going to be looking at the agents, what I believe are the top 5 agents. I'm not going to be covering the typical Jet Reyna because obviously they work really well. I mean, obviously you can insta-lock ISO and be fine, right? But we're going to be looking at utility and which agents I feel like are really good at making this map work really well. And last but not least, some plant spots and what you should know when you're planting and etc. If you're someone that has been following me, you know that I'm taking in students. You know that I've been talking about this for a while. We have a one-on-one program. If you join the Discord, you're going to get a chance to sort of look at the program. You're going to be able to, talk with me about it. And I always talk about this all the time. Essentially, all it is just a one-on-one program. We have 2 sessions per month. And during that entire period, you basically talk with me. And in this position, we would be talking on Discord, and we would just be conversing about your games, your problems, your woes in ranked. And we're just going to be trying to work you through it. Okay. The latest student that I've had has made it to Diamond. They made it to Diamond pretty quickly, I would say, within 2 weeks. The first week, they were getting their bearings. And then the second week, they decided it's time to climb, and they got it done. Okay. This was done pretty recently. So pretty happy with them, pretty happy with their success. And hopefully you can see the same change as well. Let's now talk about Pearl. When you look at any games in particular, when you're looking at a lot of games in pro play, you're going to notice that there is a lot of extremity control. And what this means is that when you are investing a hit onto a site, when you're investing anything in the attacker's side, I should mention, you're going to notice that it is very easy to get trapped off of that main area. So for example, let's say that your entire team decides to push into B. What happens is that due to the nature of how the map works, it is very easy to shut down a push without the need of maybe either ultimates or maybe potentially a lot of util dump. That's what makes this choke over here very difficult to work with. Not to mention that the long sightlines welcome different things such as crosses and ops and a lot of other things that the opponent might do. So banking all of your efforts onto one push is an easy way to lose rounds. And what this means is that you should be looking at the extremities on the other side of the map. Commonly, what you see is 4-1s, where you see 4 players towards one area and then 1 towards the other. However, there are some variations that work well, even in pro play, where they have somebody split and then just kind of lurk. Maybe, for example, you're going all towards B. You're going to see some instances of people playing over here and maybe potentially moving towards this link area. Maybe you'll see the players move towards A and they might hover around B, or maybe where I just mentioned, or maybe they'll just work their way through art, right? These are all different positions that you might be able to take, and you should be looking at always controlling more than one area, especially on Pearl. Pearl is notorious for lurks and notorious for people pushing up. There is just way too much space to control as an attacker, and if you don't control it, it just erodes away and it becomes the defenders. Because if you decide to go all in on B and then rotate over to A, you're going to struggle in taking that spot back, because they could be pushed up, they could be using these corners to their advantage, they could be taking all that mid space and then lurking up on you, right? Just putting a trip with your not with your duelist. When you put a trip over with your sentinel, you might potentially see that not be enough, and they might still get a chance to flank. So when you're playing on attack, make sure that you're not banking all of your efforts towards a site. How does this differ in ranked? Normally, if you're using ultimates, I think it's okay to sort of invest all of your players towards an area. I feel like that's fine. If you're noticing in your rounds that despite the fact that you're still getting your team some space and some time and catching timings and maybe getting kills and it's still not working, then maybe try a couple rounds with your team. But normally, more often than not, people tend to get really frustrated and blame the lurks on a map where lurk heavy, comps tend to be the most effective. So just be very wary of that. It's very prominent in like plat, maybe around a little bit lower than that in gold. So just make sure you're paying attention to that in case someone does start talking about how they might be griefing or not. Be very aware that it's actually a very common play on Pearl. Okay. The second thing you need to be aware of is how mid-centric the map is. By no means does this mean that it's very similar to that of like Ascent, where you need to always be constantly aware of mid, right? There are some things and limitations where you're always focusing on mid. The thing that I'm kind of referring to when it comes to mid-centric control is how easy it is to access other lanes very, very quickly through the control of mid. So for example, you can very easily do a split on Ascent, whereas on this one, if you try to do an Ascent, you're splitting your forces pretty unevenly, and it might end up hurting you guys a lot in the long run. However, due to the nature of how easy it is to connect these lanes, you can actually provide more lurk potential and potentially even catch rotates off guard. And that's kind of what I mean by that mid-centric control. Defenders have to be very aware of this, as it is very easy to abuse on the attacker's side. Now, for the defenders, I don't really think that there's much to it. Normally, depending on the comp that you play, you're going to be usually using some sort of sentinel. So you're going to have some control around these choke areas to some degree. But I do want you guys to sort of be aware that this map does revolve around the easy control of this link and how easy it is to kind of push up slowly. Again, I didn't talk about splits like I mentioned Ascent, right? It's not necessarily the strength of the split that is what makes it work. It's how open it is and how easy it is to lurk up on opponents. So Sentinels do feel really, really strong on this map for that reason. By no means do you have to always say pick a Sentinel, but it is something to keep in mind. Okay. Last but not least, for defenders, you're going to notice that you guys have really strong chokes and really easy access to a bunch of crosses, making attackers feel really limited in the way that they can take sites if they're not well coordinated. And this is why lurks are really effective. If you're not keeping an eye on these like sort of like chokes and like the defender side and like the mid, you're going to have some problems. But here's the second problem. If you do manage to lose that initial push and they do manage to take site, retake is a nightmare. If you're someone that is not well versed in retakes, the bread and butter of a game like Valorant, you're going to struggle on a map like this one. There's too many win conditions for attackers that it just feels almost impossible to take control of. So for example, let's say on B, we have Viper. Now I know Viper lost the lineup, lost a Molly, but that still makes them very strong. Not to mention that characters like KJ, which we will talk about, are also very strong on this map, and they also have Mollies, right? Other characters that might still be used. You potentially might see a race also has a very easy access to this area via nade, right? So all of these things will kind of come back to bite you when you're ready to sort of look down this long lane and everybody has utility meant for that bomb, right? Maybe like a wall, an astral wall can just kind of cut you guys off, and now you have to worry about that plant, right? Be very aware of those things and keep an eye out when you're playing retake only. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, now that I've sort of discussed the attack, defender strengths, is kind of clearing and how that works. I know this seems like a lot of mumbo jumbo at the beginning, but this is something that I've noticed that a lot of students tend to like and works well for them. Essentially, the way that it works is the numbering system works as to how, priority that angle is and in what sequence you should be clearing. If you're someone that is not really familiar with the way this map looks, kind of take your chances and maybe even potentially look into kind of going into a custom game and kind of just follow along if you're someone that wants to get used to this map and hasn't had a chance to play it yet. If you're someone that is kind of already well aware of how the map works and just kind of want to use this as a refresher, be my guest. let's just kind of go over it really quickly so you can kind of get an idea of what this means. Let's say you're starting on B. A lot of players tend to just ego swing over to the left and get exposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles. And this is very common for a lot of angles like here. For example, a player might swing into this area, close angle, far angle, box. There's 3 angles that they've already exposed themselves to, right? This is what's going to be happening a lot. If you're someone that wants to play it slow, maybe you're the one that's playing extremities, maybe you're the one that's playing it for the lurk. These are things you should be considering. If you're someone that's playing with the team and you're pushing, these are angles that you should be either ready to trade or ready to clear. So number 1 over here at the beginning, you clear 1 angle here close, maybe somebody's around this area, and then you clear this one right here. You're going to notice that this box is not a problem just yet, but it does become number 3. Number 3 is this entire area. They could be back here. They could be on top of the box. This area does become more dangerous when they have ops. Okay. Same thing with this angle over here by 4. You clear 4, and this 5 is this entire line. They could be close on the wall, they could be far on the wall, they could be doing all of that. There are some off angles you might deal with potentially the top of this box, maybe a chambers playing there, but very unlikely that that happens every single round. After this, you kind of push up, and then you have to deal with people that are close by. This area over here is number 6. There's always someone into this back area, and maybe number 7 playing around this little box. This area here has a pillar, and then this is a bridge that connects into this top area by heaven. After that, you have to clear heaven, and then potentially anybody dealing with this area by CT, or in this situation, link, right? So keep an eye on each one of these positions. By the way, if you're playing alone or you're someone that likes to solo queue, just because you cleared numbers 4, 5, maybe you cleared 3 in this position does not mean that there's nobody there. There could be someone ratting in this position. This corner right here could be ratted. So just keep them in the back of your mind. By no means am I promoting you to be paranoid, but at the same time, try to have some good, idea in mind of where the opponent could be pushing you from. Okay. Normally on sites, you might see a maximum of 2 players, with 3 being a stack, and that's more of a gamble than anything. So once you've cleared like 2 people, you should be more okay in clearing the other ones a little bit faster. Okay. Link, same thing. You're going to have to kind of move up. You're going to see that there's somebody that could try to catch you off guard with the timing. Someone could be trying to move up over here in terms of an off angle, and then you have to clear this really easy area because they're using this little tunnel as natural cover. After that, you kind of swing in, deal with anybody that might be playing here. Very common place for KJ turrets over here, number 4, and over here, number 5. Due to the range, you're going to be seen. So this is what KJ is going to sort of be like, and this is why KJ might be picked up a little bit more than Cypher. Again, don't take my word for it as law, but it might happen. Okay, and then after that, you kind of move in and you clear number 6. As you're pushing up, 7 over here on the right might happen, or maybe someone will swing you from 8, or maybe 5. Like I said, someone could be lurking up, someone could be in a corner, someone could swing you here from link on number 5. Right, so make sure that you're keeping an eye on number 5 or potentially number 8 as you're pushing up. Clear this one really quickly. The only reason I put 8 over here and 8 over here is simply because someone might potentially be here, and you might want to really clear it before you clear this corner. This one is not mandatory, but if you are lurking, maybe you should. I think it's worthwhile spending that extra second making sure that you're not going to get caught off guard as you're pushing this corner and this guy's walking up on you. Okay, so that's pretty much link. Once you get onto 5 over here, obviously you clear the one in front, watch your heaven, and then just obviously take that space. Okay, if your team properly plants for you around this B area, you're going to be fine. If they planted this little area over here, there's going to be some problems. Okay, let's look at art. I feel like art is a little bit more self-explanatory. You clear this area first, and once you've cleared this, it's just a matter of how good your aim is. They could be in anywhere in this area by number 4, but normally around this area because of natural cover. Clear that first, clear that, and then you can, and this is what I see a lot of people do, you can just hover around this box. You don't have to push. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to aggressively lurk into that area. You can just stay here. You don't have to push up. You staying here cuts off the rotation over here by the link, mid-centric. Again, keep that in mind. The theme is there. And at the same time, you can always just stay here. And again, you can lurk up there if you need to. If your team planted open for you, then now you have that available option. It's just there, right? Hovering this box, really useful. It's cover, it works for you, and it's just something that you can always utilize when you're playing as an attacker. Okay, last but not least is main. You're gonna notice that the numbers are a little bit wonky here. How is 7 and 8? It doesn't matter. I'll kind of cover it. So number one, when you're going in, someone could always push up. If you're someone that's unfamiliar with aggression in your elo, this might happen a lot in this map. And it's very common for a lot of players to try to take this space. Reason for it is there is an orb in this position. If you're someone that doesn't feel familiar with how quickly people can take orbs and whatnot, there's an orb here, I believe. And what happens is players tend to take this spot. Maybe a Reyna might push up and they try to get an early pick. And if it's clear, they're going to take the orb, right? Sometimes I've caught some players using maybe some timing because everybody doesn't like to push up quickly and they hide behind this box. So if you want to clear one, maybe clear all of this too, push with your team, right? And then after that, you clear this one over here. Someone likes to hold a line over here. Someone likes to hold a more direct line, right? This area by number 2 is going to be the most dangerous, similar to what we saw over here in art. You're going to notice that a lot of the first 3 angles towards A side are very tight. So you got to make sure that you're slowly clearing that or peeking with someone and double swinging. Okay, so call your swings. Flash, maybe use some utility, right? Or make sure that you're slowly clearing for those angles. Last but not least, number 3 is again, same thing. It's a timing. This is more of a one and done. And a lot of times 2 and 3 might stack. Okay, so maybe a Reyna will play 3 and maybe a Viper might play 2 or something, right? So you can see something like this. Reyna gets a kill, leaves, and then Viper can get a kill and then just leave. And then they already have a man advantage in case one of them dies. Okay. Once this is done, you can push up. You can take the orb if it's free. I suggest that you try to take orbs as quickly as possible. I missed this, but there is an orb over here on B. It's not as easy to get if we can't get control of this sightline, but we'll talk about agents that can help you do that. Okay, so there's that. Once you do that, you clear number 4 and 5. Both of these kind of happen at the same time. If you're someone that is in diamond, I swear I've seen a lot of you swing into this angle and deal with both angles at once. And again, it's easy to be paranoid, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're the one alive, despite the fact that, you have a team behind you. You're the only one that can make an impact. And swinging into multiple angles is one way of ruining that impact. Clear these 2 and then clear this one over here. Someone might try to jump you and perhaps they'll be on top of this little area. This is an area you can jump up from getting on top of this like little ledge. There's players that might play around here potentially, try to get like a little height advantage. Both of these are possible. Another one that I see players do is if they have a Sage, they can actually be back here, put up a wall, and they have like an easy, I wouldn't really call it like a hidden angle. You can really easily see it, but it will catch you off guard if you're not familiar with it, and they might play back there. Do I expect a lot of Sage players in your games? Probably not, but there are some still in existence, right? So keep this in mind. Someone that might be up here, if they have a Sage, make sure you clear that angle. There's just going to be right across. And again, if you're following with me with like maybe a custom game, you're going to be able to see this quite clearly. And if you get a chance to look at it in your Swift plays, you're going to see what I mean. After that, you kind of clear number 7 and number 8, and the site is yours. In terms of smokes, depending on the agent that you pick, it might change. The more common places for smokes are going to be 5 and 6. There are some occasions where 4 and 5 are done, but it's kind of a weird kind of position to be in. More often than not, you're going to be reliant on a lot of duelists to help you take that space. And I do see 5 and 6 used the most since those are the areas where the chokes are. And then 4 being kind of one of those where you're just going to clear with your team once you take that space. Okay. If you're playing with like a double controller, which is very prominent on this map, which I will discuss, it's really easy to kind of just put maybe something like a Viper wall here or a Harbor wall, and then just have some other smoke control that 6. As for this over here by B, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You're going to make sure that you have control of at the very least this smoke area so your team can kind of push up. And then after that, you can do a couple of different things. You can smoke number 9. So you can use this so they can't push out of this link area in case they're rotating over from this link. Or you can do heaven and this CT area. So remember how I mentioned this is an upper area? Down there, there's also an entrance that's CT. So you can smoke both heaven and this, and that can give you a huge advantage. When we talk about Viper, I'll talk about some of the walls that you can use in case you want to use Viper instead of using that extra, Sentinel pick and you guys want to go double controller, because that is a possibility in your comps. But normally, yeah, that's how you would smoke this. In terms of mid, obviously you can smoke this area right here and you can smoke this area right here or here, right? Normally, it's not very common to smoke art, so I wouldn't recommend art, but do smoke this area over here as it gives you a chance to lurk up. You can jump up on this area and maybe getting advantage in dealing with number 1 and potentially even number 2 if you wish. You can even jump up on this line as well. So that was all of the common angles. I know it seemed like a lot to discuss. It felt very open, but this is something that I'm willing to give a shot for. And if a lot of people do like this type of kind of clearing guide for common angles for other maps, please let me know. I know that you guys wanted an attack guide, so maybe this is something that you guys are looking forward to. Please let me know in the comments if this is something that you kind of want. Right, let's move on to the next bit. What agents work? So we've talked about KJ just a little bit. So KJ, I would say, would go over something like Cypher. I think Deadlock is a new addition that might still be useful. However, KJ is still pretty supreme in this map. There's a couple of reasons why. Not only are chokes really dangerous to kind of cross on both A and B, which are very easily controlled by an alarm bot, but the way that you can use, and like I mentioned over here in the map, there's a lot of long sight lines that can be easily controlled just by using a turret. And because of that, you pretty much have a pretty easy way of playing the game by just being AFK. You can just get information for your team. However, what we mentioned earlier in those little guidelines of what the map is going to be, if you're finding yourself constantly, and I mean constantly playing retake, maybe you should try moving away from KJ in terms of your agent pool. Because retake with KJ is impossible. However, there is a flip side. You always have a nice win condition if they either come to your site or you're playing post plant on attack. If you're playing post plant on attack, you're always going to have a really easy angle for throwing your mollies and maybe even potentially catching people off guard when you're lurking. So you're always going to have a chance to play on attack. So defense is more of a preventative measure than it is on attack. Because on attack, you're just kind of winning rounds through your mollies. Okay. The second one that we're going to be looking at is Astra. I think Astra, now that they got their 5th star, I believe it mostly had to do with Pearl, the more I look into it, because she was an insane pick for a map like Pearl. Not only is double controller a very, very prominent pick, but when it came to the controller that you would use, it would be Astra. Astra would be an insane pick due to the fact that she could control an entire site with the stars that she was given. You can see that you can create a little star over here for anyone that's playing towards this box. You can pull, you can stun, you can concuss, anything like that. Anybody that's playing towards these areas, you can very easily smoke. You can pull towards this area in case your players want to kind of push into this little elbow area, and you can always control this smoke, right? You have a lot of control when it comes to Astra. She also has a lot of post-plant potential as well. We talked about it earlier. If your team likes to plant into these open areas, you can just easily wall that off, and it becomes a lot easier for your team to control, right? You're also a bigger threat than a character like Omen, because the map, if you haven't noticed, it's huge. Astra can easily control the extremities of A while everybody's pushing B, while still creating all of these different positions and potentially even playing for an orb over on A so she can have a wall to even control B. Again, the options are infinite, and she can still do it due to the fact that she has infinite range. If you're someone that likes to manage stars, if you're someone that likes to play Astra, this might be the map for you. You can still play Omen. I think that's still a character that you can look forward to, but you're going to miss some chances. Okay, so you can take down the route of different teams where instead of playing extremities over on A, you're kind of stuck with the team and you're playing more towards mid and you're lurking. It's a little bit more predictable, but it is still viable. And I want you guys to think about that when you're picking your character. Other characters that you can pick, we've discussed these in the past. We've talked about Viper. So Viper is a character that I'm going to be talking about in just a second, right? So Viper has a lot of defensive controller capabilities, and it's something that you can use when you're looking at, let's say, for example, not picking a Sentinel. She works very similar to that of a Sentinel. You're not really throwing if you decide to pick, maybe, for example, double controller, double duelist, and then initiator, right? You can still do that on this map in ranked if you're someone that likes to pick Viper. However, there's a lot of things that you used to be able to do in the past that I will have to mention. Viper cannot be picked solo anymore because you cannot control both, like, for example, if you threw like a smoke here and then a wall here, you can't control both of the sidelines without your walls dropping almost immediately. The nerf did hit her pretty bad, but I will come back to Viper in just a second. When it comes to Fade and Chamber, we've already talked about Chamber in his Chamber changes. He's actually really strong now, in which he can actually hold long lanes like this one. And I think that if you're someone that likes Chamber, you can just control this lane almost infinitely. And without any sort of problem, and as long as you're not being contested all the time, you can just hold this lane and you'll be fine. The TP allows you to be able to recontest angles really quickly, and you can also use it to maybe reposition really quickly for a rotate. So you can always have that option for you. I think this one's pretty straightforward. And if you have a character like a Raze that can't really op, but you decide to pick Chamber, you now have that option for you. You're also really good because you have your trip, so you can either put it for yourself in a more selfish playstyle, or maybe you can do it for something like, maybe for example, putting it towards Link and having something to help you out with. Okay. When it comes to Fade, Fade is an icon when it comes to taking sites. I believe that she's one of these stronger initiators. However, there are no bad initiators for a map like Pearl. You can still pick KO. KO is still a viable choice. You can pick something like Sky, despite the fact that her flashes are no longer infinite. You can pick characters like Breach if you have good combo utility. For example, you want to go in with Neon, right? These characters are still really good. But when it comes to solo queue and maybe potentially ranked, I think that she offers a little bit more bang for your buck, as you can use your entire piece of your kit and all of your utility to fully clear a site. You can use this to maybe clear 1 through 3, and then you can use the next few to kind of clear the rest of site while throwing a little eye lineup, which allows you to clear the rest of site and maybe even punish anyone that likes to play towards the backside area over here. So really strong both in attack and defense, and you're pretty much always going to be rewarded for making sure that you keep an eye on how many enemies like to push up and how many times they like to play these corners, because the more utility you have by the end of the round towards like the post plant potential of things, you're going to be a lot stronger. So again, someone to kind of keep an eye on, someone to kind of look at. If you're someone that really likes Fade, Pearl might be a good pick for you, similar to that of Astra. Let's go back to Viper for just a second. So Viper is a little strange. So why not Harbor instead of Viper? Why is that the case? I believe that Harbor is going to start getting picked a little bit more. However, the main reason why we like to pick Viper and why I think Viper's a little bit stronger is due to the win condition from the lineup. I feel like the singular lineup, the singular molly, is enough to delay for enough time to maybe potentially get a round win. And that's more than anything that you can do with Harbor. That doesn't mean that Harbor is bad. I think you can pick Harbor. I think that I've seen a lot of teams that picked both Harbor and Viper for a map like this because it allows you to control verticality. So let's say, for example, you're going towards B. A simple wall from Harbor allows you to control not only the area over here by Heaven, but also the area over here by CT. So he's still really strong. He's still a prominent pick. But again, just the idea of being able to play Viper as a sentinel and being able to use her to lurk and being able to use her to control all of these different sightlines while still being a really feasible character with double controller makes her a lot stronger. Again, you can still pick Harbor. I will not judge you. I think Viper is still just a little stronger in my opinion. As for anything in terms of setups, there's a lot of different things you can do. I feel like the map has changed a lot since the last piece of content that I've seen when it comes to the game, but there's a couple of things that you can do when it comes to walls. This is a pretty popular wall. You pretty much just wall across, and it allows you to wall towards Heaven and have full control of Heaven, and at the same time block off this link over here. Almost called a CT, and then you can use the smoke that you're going to be having your orb to maybe do lineups on. Depending on where you plant, your orb is still going to be really useful. There's other things that pros have done in the past. So for example, you've done a wall that goes diagonally like so, and basically what it does is it blocks CT entry, and it also blocks this sightline so you can do 2 for 1. And this is what I was talking about, that she lost that little bit of potential. She used to be able to do that because she would throw an orb towards Heaven. And this would allow her to not only control Heaven, this little area over here by Hell, and at the same time, anybody that wanted to swing into this area, but she would also be able to control anybody that's towards this back area of sight, allowing for a free plant, and anyone crossing in. This is no longer as viable. You can still try it in your games, but only do it if you have an Astra. I think this is still a popular play that you can try. Okay. For defenders, there's a couple things you can do. If you've looked at any of the games, maybe for example, you're a fan of EDG now that they've won, they used to do a thing where they would essentially wall from here and wall right across. Reason being, there used to be a really huge gap between these two positions. And what they would do is they noticed that normally you couldn't smoke this area with an orb smoke like Omen or Brim or anything like that. So they would use a Viper wall to wall right across like this. If you're playing in any of the lower elos, you can also just wall diagonally across like this. And this allows you to basically cut off this area from this area, allowing you to have a much easier retake. Just keep in mind, of course, of any lineups, as some of them might not be requiring this line of sight to work, right? Other things that you might do on attack, you're going to be seeing this. Basically, it goes right across where it blocks off not only art entrance, not only A entrance, but also over here by Link. And what you're going to notice is this is, again, also a wall that was used by EDG. And basically, this is a wall that was kind of used to sort of do a lot of different things, but I kind of just added this orb here just for the pizzazz of having something to kind of work with, because if you use her solo, you're going to have a harder time kind of balancing both lanes over here. So you want to have that backup option in case they're only pushing A and your team needs to have something to work with. There is not a lot more to really say. I feel like you can really experiment with Viper when it comes to these lineups themselves. There's a lot of different ways to kind of play with Viper. For example, I've seen people sort of like use a wall diagonally like this, and this allows the enemy to sort of cross like a multiple amount of times before they enter sight. So this could be also a really useful way of delaying for space or maybe lurking up. So use that at your own risk. These are things that you can try with Viper, and this is the reason why Viper is still pretty strong. But again, normally try to see if you can get a double controller comp in your games. It's going to benefit you a lot when you do pick her. And that's why she was at the very bottom, but still kind of strong, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's kind of finish off with the final topic, and that was the plants. The plants are pretty straightforward. Depending on what you're trying to look for, depending on the site, there might be some differences. The one that's easiest to cover is going to be bees. So anything between this point to this point, it's fair game. I believe that anything closer to this area over here by the B is much easier to kind of do. Not only are you not going to get spam from CT, but as long as you have a smoke towards heaven and no one's pushing you CT towards Link or CT, you're going to be fine in this plant spot. A lot of people like to plant safe behind this box, but it's easily spammable. And a lot of the times, if they do have a Viper, they like to put a one-way here, which pretty much just hits you, or maybe they put the orb on the area and you kind of lose HP. Another common trap that I see a lot of players do is they like to plant around this box. Do not plant in this area right here. This is a very common trap for low elo players, and even for high elo players that panic. Anyone that likes to play around this area is pretty much just kind of inting, because you're going to be playing post plant towards this space. The only time that you would plant here is if you're coming in maybe from CT and you're rotating over and you want to have an open area from elbow, or there's people playing on site that you can guarantee will win the round for you. There's not a lot of lineups that land here. Maybe Viper has some. I'm not too familiar anymore with the changes, but there are some things that you can do towards this area in case you want to feel like a nerd, but I would not recommend it for most of your games. Try to plant around here, and maybe around this area will be the most successful. I've talked about Astro Walls that like to cover this. I talked about the Viper Wall that likes to cut this. More of the time, you're going to be finding yourself here. And this also is pretty easy due to the fact that you can play towards this back box area and pretty much just have a clear line of sight towards both of these plants. And if you're playing around any of these two spots here or here, you can just easily just launch and just eyeball a lineup. I wouldn't call it a lineup, but you're just throwing utility at it. When it comes to A, this one's a little bit tricky. Anyone that's playing towards backside, maybe flowers, or towards CT, maybe like over here by, hidden, secret, whatever you want to call it, around these areas, you're going to notice that they like to plant over here. This is normally a plant that you would do when you're rotating over, or if you notice that the enemy team like to push up, they decided to push out of B, for example, and you decided to kind of flip the site by taking control of CTs and then having full control of back site. Pretty strong for things like that. Pretty strong in ecos as well, so you can look at that if you wish. When it comes to 8, there's a couple of different ways of playing it. You can just put it directly on the default safest plant that you can do. You can be spammed through this box over here. That's about it. You don't really have many problems. Maybe they have like a molly for you. There's really not much. More often than not, this is the best and safest plant to do. And this is the one that I would recommend you do the most, similar to the one over here. Pretty much you just have full control of anybody that's playing main, and most of the time you're going to have main control. So you're going to be fine over here. When it comes to this plant over here, or anything that's out in the open, that's if you have a little bit more control. Maybe you have a lurk towards art that we talked about, this little link area, right? Maybe you have some more space, maybe towards this like hidden area, maybe by secret CT, anything like that, you have some control, right? So this area is a little bit better because it allows you to play more mind games. It allows to be more open. It's a lot easier to play against. in terms of the amount of angles that you have against the enemy team. So that's fine. Over here, a little bit more open. If you plant by the red, you only have two options. You play art, you play sight, right? Art, sight, like this area, this line of sight needs to be covered, as anyone that's pushing from main or maybe CT is not really going to have a good angle, right? Or you planted because you panicked. I would not suggest you plant here. It's almost a negative. Okay. This is the easiest plant spot and is also the most convenient. So do this one and you should be okay. With that out of the way, that pretty much concludes the class. Today's class was long. It was lengthy. I covered a lot of different topics, but if you're someone that wanted to get really well acquainted with Pearl, today's was the class for you. If you're someone that has any questions about it, feel free to put down in the comments or just ping me in Discord and just be like, hey, saw your guide. What about this? Okay. With that out of the way, we're pretty much done. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great week.